Listen to me very carefully, my friend. Killing sure will not bring you peace. Peace was never an option.
Welcome back, Screen Crush. I'm Ryan Airy. In the world of the X-Men, mutants are regarded with fear, suspicion, and even hatred. They're different. Their abilities are perceived as a threat. Mutant kind faces discrimination, segregation, even extermination. These themes are at the heart of almost every X-Men story, and they always lead to the opposing ideals of Professor X and Magneto. One envisions a hopeful and peaceful coexistence with humans and mutants built upon the rejection of violence and the embracement of equality.
It's the greatest gift we have, to bear their pain without breaking. And it's born from the most human part, hope.
The other wants to build a world where mutants can be free and safe by any means necessary. For Magneto, there is no option for peace between mutants and humanity. Humans will forever fear and reject mutants, and that hate will lead to the extermination of his people. Because of this, Magneto believes that any action he takes to protect mutants is justified.
The extermination has already begun. Make no mistake, my brothers. They will draw first blood. The only question is, will you join my brotherhood and fight? Or wait for the inevitable genocide?
And this is the question, really. Are mutants and humans destined to exterminate each other, or can there be a peaceful resolution? Was Magneto right in his ideology and prophecy of the future? And if so, does that justify his terrible crimes? So let's explore the X-Men movies and see if Magneto was in fact right. The answer may be far more complicated and surprising than you think.
The war is still coming, Charles, and I intend to fight it. By any means necessary.
Erik Lensher's entire life is shaped by the Holocaust. It's in the Auschwitz concentration camp where Erik sees the worst of humanity, witnessing the genocide of his people. The Nazis used discrimination that allowed them to dehumanize the Jewish people, see them as subhumans, creatures whom they can oppress, brutalize, and mass murder. This is the evil that made Erik see humanity in only one way, the enemy of his people.
They're just following orders.
I've been at the mercy of men just following orders. Never again.
Despite the parallels to racism, homophobia, and anti-Semitism,
have you tried not being a mutant?
Mutants are not hated simply because they are different. They are feared because of their powers. So it leads to an unavoidable escalation and inevitable conflict. The very first X-Men movie establishes this right away, as Senator Robert Kelly advocates the Mutant Registration Act. Using paranoia and dehumanization, Kelly successfully presents the mutants as threats, so humanity must take drastic measures to protect itself.
The truth is that mutants are very real, and they are among us. We must know who they are, and above all, we must know what they can do.
History has proven that all it takes is a charismatic leader to say the right words at the right time to incite people against a common enemy. How easy it is then to form hateful and angry mobs. On paper, there is a logic behind the Mutant Registration Act. There are mutants that are actually a threat to the world, so they do need to be monitored. After all, not all mutants are victims. Sabretooth, for example, relishes in violence and murder. But most humans don't differentiate between murderous mutants like Sabretooth and a heroic mutant such as Beast. For humans, the mutants are all the same.
I think the American people deserve the right to decide whether they want their children to be in school with mutants, to be taught by mutants.
The MRA is a way to target and segregate mutants, mark them as different, and turn the public on them. And with the influence of federal law, the government can control mutants' rights and even their freedoms. What's to prevent the government from arresting any mutant they deem to be too dangerous? And how quickly can it spiral out of control?
The president could declare a state of emergency, place every mutant in the country under arrest.
Upon hearing Kelly's words, Magneto could only interpret them in one way. This is another Holocaust in the making.
I've heard these arguments before.
And so Magneto took action, a very drastic action. He built a machine that can turn humans into mutants, and he planned to use it on the world's leaders. Yes, there is a case to be made that Magneto created a very dangerous escalation. His actions confirm to humanity that mutants are dangerous, so they must take drastic measures to protect themselves. It becomes an endless loop where each side finds justification for more and more terrible actions. But Magneto's motivations come from desperation to save his people.
Why do none of you understand what I'm trying to do? Those people down there, they control our fate and the fate of every other mutant.
He witnessed the genocide of the Jewish people, but he was powerless to stop it. But now, he's one of the most powerful mutants in the world, and he'll be damned if he won't save his people from another genocide. When the Sokovia Accords were introduced in Captain America Civil War, Steve Rogers and some other heroes rejected them, believing that the Accords are wrong and will limit the heroes from protecting the world.
We may not be perfect, but the safest hands are still our own.
They went as far as to choose violence against those who enforce the Accords. If Steve Rogers is justified to defy the world's governments, isn't Magneto justified to rise against the government that seeks to force the Registration Act on his people?
He's out of line, but he's right.
The superhero world is filled with individuals who took action, who made the choice to fight for what they believe in. Steve Rogers chose to fight in World War II because
there are men laying down their lives. I got no right to do any less than them.
Batman became a vigilante to battle crime and corruption in his city. And the Punisher kills criminals because for him, anything short of that is a half measure.
Only I do the one thing that you can't. You hit them and they get back up. I hit them and they stay down. It's permanent.
Now, this is not to say that Xavier and the X-Men are just twiddling their thumbs. They are doing their best to protect mutants and humans alike. But they only act when they must, desperately trying to juggle the fragile balance between peace and violence. Not all of humanity wants mutant extermination, but all it takes is a few anti-mutant leaders such as Kelly and William Stryker to serve as the match to this powder keg.
The war has begun.
X2 makes the case for why Magneto was always right. It might also prove that Xavier's approach actually puts mutant kind at a far greater risk. While Charles was so determined to stop his old friend from starting a war with humanity, he was blind to the fact that the war had started long ago, when William Stryker was abusing, brainwashing, and turning mutants into weapons.
Experimented on, butchered. Where were you, Charles? We were supposed to protect them. Where were you when your own people needed you?
After manufacturing an attack on the president, Stryker gained a free hand to deal with mutants with extreme prejudice. Ironically, despite all of Charles's talk about peaceful coexistence, he became the harbinger of death for his people. If not for Magneto, every mutant in the world would have died. This makes Magneto the savior of mutant kind, while Xavier's way almost exterminated them all. It also proves that all it takes is one hateful human to be a tangible threat to the entire mutant race. One man. All it took was one man. How can mutants be safe in a world where something like this can happen?
How does it look from there, Charles? Still fighting the good fight? From here, it doesn't look like they're playing by your rules.
Charles isn't naive. He knows that humans are far from perfect. Yet, he keeps believing in a better tomorrow to a fault because he simply can't accept that Magneto is right. And so, mutants need Magneto. He's not the hero they deserve, but the savior they need, since his view of humanity is the very thing that saved the mutants in X2. And this is something that keeps happening throughout the X-Men franchise, as well as the comics and animated shows. Just look at what happened during the Cuban Missile Crisis. The X-Men saved the day, they prevented World War III, but in doing so, they revealed themselves to the world. And what was humanity's first response? Rain fire on the mutants. If not for Magneto, everyone on that beach would be dust, just like Magneto predicted the night before.
Sure, us, they won't differentiate. They'll fear us, and that fear will turn to hatred.
A decade later, Bolivar Trask used paranoia, inciting the government against the mutants, and that led to the creation of the Sentinels, machines that are built for one purpose only: identify mutants and exterminate them. And we saw the results of that in the dark future, as the Sentinels brought the mutants to near extinction, again proving that Xavier is incapable of preventing the inevitable.
Erik was right. Humanity does this to us.
Then there's the future we saw in Logan, where almost all the mutants were wiped out. This time, humanity used a bioengineered weapon that prevented the propagation of the X gene.
Why don't you show some respect, Mutie? You're looking at the man that wiped out your kind.
This didn't exterminate the mutants outright, but slowly over time, and made them into a commodity that human beings could own.
Growing mutants of your own.
Precisely.
Essentially turning the mutant race into slaves. There were times when humanity attempted to resolve their conflict with mutants more peacefully, at least on paper. The mutant cure in The Last Stand was created to neutralize mutants' powers and turn them back into regular humans.
A way to suppress the mutant X gene. They're calling it a cure.
Such a nice gesture, right? It's basically humanity saying that being a mutant is like having a disease.
Their affliction is nothing more than a disease, a corruption of healthy cellular activity.
It's hypocritical and rooted in a warped sense of superiority. The cure is just another genocide attempt, only in a different form. Mutants are not sick humans, they are their own race. Curing them is essentially the same as killing their individuality as a people.
You built these weapons to destroy us. Why? Because you are afraid of our gifts. Because we are different. Humanity has always feared that which is different.
And to make it clear, we here at Screen Crush do not condone violence in any way. We're talking about Magneto. When we say that Magneto is right, we are talking about his philosophy and his justifiable need to take action and protect his people. But in his battle for freedom, Magneto committed atrocious crimes. He resorted to murder and terrorism. Those things should never be glorified. And despite what he preaches, he has no problem using his own people as pawns in his revolution.
In chess, the pawns go first.
And there are moments where Magneto became the very thing that he hates.
I say to you, we are the cure! The cure for that infirm, imperfect condition called Homo sapien.
There is also another factor in Magneto's philosophy, as he believes that mutants are genetically superior to humanity. This, of course, leads to a sense of superiority, which many times allowed him to justify his most terrible actions.
You are a god among insects. Never let anyone tell you different.
And that same sense of superiority does mirror the justification Nazis used in World War II. That being said, there is merit to Magneto's philosophy that mutants are the next step of human evolution.
Mutation. It is the key to our evolution. It has enabled us to evolve from a single-celled organism into the dominant species on the planet.
Magneto is a product of society. All the tragedy in his life made him cruel and radical. It doesn't justify anything, but it does explain why he does what he does. History is filled with bloody revolutions. There is no way around it. Magneto is fighting for the safety and freedom of his people. And, like the man said,
the price of freedom is high. It always has been. And it's a price I'm willing to pay.
And do I think that Charles Xavier's intentions are right and good? Of course. We all should aspire for peace and equality, work for a better tomorrow, and learn how to peacefully coexist with each other. It's a dream we should all strive for and never give up on it. But we also can't deny reality, where at times this dream is so rarely feasible. Look, I'm sorry for all the gloom and doom, but it's true. Xavier's ideology is based on the belief that all sides will strive and agree on peace. Can mutants really depend on such a one-sided hope when their existence is constantly in the balance?
Are you really so naive as to think that they won't battle their own extinction? Or is it arrogance? I'm sorry? After tomorrow they're going to turn on us. But you're blind, Ted.
So Xavier in the movies and in the comics can be a real hypocrite. He preaches peace, but he himself has resorted to taking drastic measures over the years, like manipulating and even deleting memories of other mutants, like the time he messed with Jean Grey's mind to imprison the Dark Phoenix. He created contingency plans to neutralize and kill the X-Men, and he was part of the morally questionable team, the Illuminati. Plus, there's this line from the Dark Phoenix.
It's all just a means to an end, Raven.
What end is that?
Keeping us safe.
Which sounds like something Magneto would say. Quality of that movie aside, Xavier's approach in it is actually very interesting. It shows that he has doubts about his vision. As long as the X-Men play heroes, the world might forget about the fact that they're mutants.
We're only ever one bad day away from them starting to see us as the enemy again.
So what? We wear matching costumes and smile in pictures
That
to
is
make
a
everyone
small
feel
price
safe?
to pay for keeping the peace.
By risking our people to save theirs.
Yes, yes!
The X-Men themselves end up questioning the effectiveness of the Professor's ideals, especially when they are the ones who pay the price for them.
Who the hell do you think you are? You're a mutant. The whole world out there is full of people that hate and fear you, and you're wasting your time trying to protect them?
And on top of that, Charles himself doesn't live by what he preaches, because he and the other X-Men tend to live in seclusion in the X-Mansion, away from the humans. And that place is far from being the safest place for mutants, after being attacked constantly and destroyed many times. In contrast, Magneto is able to create multiple safe havens for mutants, such as Genosha, Asteroid M, and Utopia. That's really the core of his motives, to build a world where mutants can truly live in peace and freedom. A place where they are accepted and don't feel like outcasts, where they don't have to be afraid of who they are or for their safety. Though Magneto's perfect utopia has no place for humans. The irony here is that every time Magneto built nations for mutants, most of them chose to live under his rule, preferring separation from humans.
Mutants out in public using their powers. Like it's normal.
That's because it is normal here.
In fact, at a certain point in the comics, about 95% of the mutant population lived on Genosha. That's more than 16 million mutants, choosing the safety and freedom Magneto offered over Xavier's coexistence with humanity. If that's not proof enough that Magneto is right, then I don't know what is.
I'm smart, you're dumb. I'm right, you're wrong. And there's nothing you can do about it.
But Genosha has a dark history. Before becoming a mutant safe haven, it was ruled by humans who enslaved mutants. Eventually, the island was given to Magneto, where he built an only mutant nation. Genosha became a prosperous, safe, and happy place for mutants. But it was a short-lived utopia as the Sentinels attacked the island. In one day, the Sentinels killed more than 16 million mutants. 16 million! It was a complete annihilation, reducing the mutant population to under 1 million. After this devastating event, many mutants around the world embraced the phrase, Magneto was right. The irony is that Genosha and so many other calamities like it could have been averted, if only Magneto and Professor X worked together for the betterment of mutant kind instead of fighting each other.
All those years wasted fighting each other, Charles.
This is proven by the newest comic book, House of X. In this story, Xavier abandoned his dream for peaceful coexistence with humans. Instead, he puts all his efforts into creating the ultimate safe haven for his kind. He and Magneto join forces, and on the island of Krakoa, they build a new utopia, better than any other that came before. They declare Krakoa as the sovereign nation for all mutants, and thanks to the island's unique qualities, it becomes a global superpower. The mutants are safer than ever, because this time, Magneto and Xavier are working together. Even Apocalypse joins them. At the end of the story, Magneto and Professor X stand together as the mutants celebrate their new age of freedom. They know that sooner or later humanity will come for them because they will never accept mutants and they will never allow them to possess such power. So the two friends turned enemies turned friends again unite to protect their people against humanity. It's a bittersweet ending, but House of X and so many other X-Men stories in the comics, the movies, and the animated shows send a very clear and loud message. Magneto was right.
You have lived in the shadows and shame and fear for too long. Come out. Join me. Together in a brotherhood of our kind. A new tomorrow that starts today.
And so what do you think about all this? Was Magneto right? Could there be a world where mutants and humans find a way to coexist, or is war inevitable? Let me know in the comments below or at me on Twitter, and if it's your first time here, be sure to subscribe and hit that bell. For Screen Crush, I'm Ryan Airy.